Okay, we're back. We're live. We're here in the lower level of Pioneer Plaza, at the center, the core of downtown Honolulu, and we're doing our favorite show, our flagship show. If you didn't know, it's Wednesday 4 to 5, and it's called Hawaii: The State of Clean Energy. And I'm Jay Fidell. But I want to tell you who else is with me. Okay, that's Jim Alberts right next to me. He's from Hawaiian Electric. He is the Senior Vice President for Customer Service at Hawaiian Electric Companies.
Thank you, Jay. Appreciate being here.
Yeah, thanks for coming down, Jim. It's nice to have you. And Ray Starling, my co-host, forever and ever. Great co-host. At the end, he's going to summarize. You'll see. He's fabulous.
Oh, that's terrific. I should get notes.
Mind like a clamp, you know. Okay, but before we get to the actual show, which is called A Look into the Future of Hawaiian Electric Companies, we're going to do a little thing with the Negawatt Moment, namely Steve Chang from Hawaii Energy. He's going to tell us what else is good for energy efficiency here on a given Wednesday from 4 to 5 p.m. on Hawaii, the State of Clean Energy. Welcome to the show, Steve.
Thanks, Jay, and appreciate the invitation. Let me start by
Can you speak up? We need to hear you every word.
Sure.
We're writing this down. Yeah.
Sure thing. Hawaii Energy is the electric rate.
Is the switch on? Is the switch on? Okay, that's better.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for having me, Jay. Hawaii Energy is the electric ratepayer-funded energy efficiency conservation program serving the islands of Maui, Molokai, Lanai, Hawaii, and Oahu. Let me start with this. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. However, it can be wasted. Today's topic is something cool and refreshing. I want to talk to you about energy efficiencies with swimming pools. Everybody likes swimming pools. I'm not sure if you have one, but I grew up with one. And I guess the only thing that people don't like about swimming pools is the maintenance and operation or operating costs. Many people associate filtration and circulation of the pump with cleanliness. Just because it's clear doesn't necessarily mean that the water is clean. So a lot of people tend to run pumps continuously without really knowing if the water is clean.
Well, they want to be sure. If you're going to swim in there and all those microbiology things, you want it to be really clean. So you're not too concerned about energy. So what are you suggesting here?
Well, definitely we want it to be clean, and a good way to test that is testing the water. I like to watch Survivor Man, and sometimes he needs to go out and find water, and just because the water is clear doesn't mean it's safe or drinkable. So a suggestion is to install a variable speed drive on a pump. And the magic part of it, and it really isn't magic, and I'll get to it, is that if you can reduce the speed of your pump by 20%, you can actually reduce your energy by 50%. It's not a one-for-one correlation. If you can reduce your speed by 50%, you can reduce your energy use by over 85%. It's not magic, it's actually math, and it's the pump affinity law.
It's got to do with hydraulics, doesn't it?
It sure does. The power is proportional to the cube of the speed.
Did you know that? God, you'll learn so much here. We learn so much. Keep going.
Sure.
You got our attention now, Steve.
Great. So typically a 2-horsepower pool pump running 6 hours a day will cost you about $1,100 a year. If you reduce the speed to half, you can run that pool pump 12 hours a day and spend half the amount of money at $550, and you're still pushing the same amount of volume of water for that circulation. So $550 a year savings for about a $2,000 investment. So it's about a 4-year payback. I would imagine that you are looking long-term with your swimming pool. So we encourage this, and at Hawaii Energy we have incentives and rebates available for both residential and commercial clients. Residential residential is $150
For what?
For installing a variable speed drive on your swimming pool. And for commercial facilities, we pay $225 per horsepower. By the way,
a commercial pool?
For a commercial pool, like at a hotel or
Okay.
a public park.
All right.
And by the way, I've spoken with Department of Health, and please verify this. There is no minimum turnover rate here in Hawaii for public swimming pools. They are most concerned with the water quality, the cleanliness of the water, the alkalinity, the pH level, the chlorine, and so forth. So once again, it's not a matter of circulating the water, it's also about the quality of the water.
Sure, you want to test it so you can feel comfortable. Okay, that's very helpful. Let me call for cross-examination now.
Sure.
What about it, Jim? Do you have any cross-examination you want to ask him about?
So if you had to guess what the size of this opportunity is in terms of savings for the community, what do you think it would be?
Well, I already provided some basic information on the savings. Two horsepower is about 2,500 watts, which is 2.5 kilowatts. You multiply that by the number of hours in a day. Say you run that 5 hours a day. That's 10 kilowatt hours a day. Multiply by your rate, 30 cents. 10 times 30 cents. That's costing what? $3 a day to circulate. So if I'm saying that you can reduce it by half, people could pay $1.50 a day and use about 5 kWh a day. Multiply that by the number of people that have swimming pools. There's 400,000 residents in the state. I'm not sure what percent. I would say maybe 10% has swimming pools, maybe more. Call it 40,000 swimming pools times 5 kWh.
That's a big opportunity.
Yeah. Ray?
Sounds good. I don't have a pool.
No, I don't either. So for me, it's theoretical. How about you, Rob DeVeriterta? Do you have a pool?
I don't have a pool, no.
Okay, all right. Well, maybe we should all get pools so we can take advantage of this efficiency.
Or just go swimming in the ocean.
There you go.
Yeah, we have those.
All right, thank you, Steve.
Sure. Actually, just in closing, I might have said this before, but I think it's worth repeating that when it comes to energy as well as in life, there's some things that we can control and some things we cannot. Things that we cannot control are like natural disasters, fires, floods, earthquakes, and tsunamis, which causes power outages and disruptions. However, we can control how we use energy, from the equipment we use to the source that we use, the frequency of use, and time of use.
Okay, thank you very much. Steve Chang from Hawaii Energy on the Negawatt Moment.
Thank you.
Let me take a moment for housekeeping here, because pursuant to our, our daily advisory, we call it the Global. This show is an engagement show, and if you have noticed, we have participation instructions on the screen. So if you're watching and you want to participate, engage with us, you open your smartphone browser, you go to LiveSift, LiveSift.com, you enter participant code ENERGY in caps, and then you can ask a question. You can start doing that now. It's what fun. And you can keep on doing it, and we have Alex Burgos here in the control room. He's from LiveSift.com. We have Sharon Moriwaki with him. They're checking on your questions, and we'll pose these questions to Jim Alberts. Okay, this will be a first. This is good. This is good.
This is exciting.
Yeah, exciting. So ask us questions. Anything about energy. Anything about
I've got a
HECO.
quick question. I've been wondering, you have about how many employees now there at
About 2,800.
2,800, and we know that that the utility business across the nation is going through a lot of transformation now, and here in particular, because we're so much dependent on oil, we have a lot of change taking place, and I was wondering how are the people within the company? We talk a lot about the external stuff, but the internal stuff. How are the people in the company coping with all of the massive change that is going on now?
My observation is the team and the people at Hawaiian Electric are very excited about the opportunity. They look at the future as a bright one. We've got so much potential to help our community. I'll give you a couple of good examples. People really rally around having a plan and being able to execute on those plans. So we've recently submitted several of our plans, the Power Supply Improvement Plan, Distributed Generation Interconnection Plan, and Demand Response Plans. And people are chomping at the bit to start that customer engagement process, finalize those plans, and really get moving, because it's that end outcome of saving people money that really excites everybody in our team. They really want to do what's best for Hawaii.
So what's the process between, you know, the submission of the plans and the reality? There's an awful lot of stuff in the plans that Hawaiian Electric submitted to the PUC, which is, what was it, end of August, was it?
That's right.
So now we wait. And the question is, what is the process going forward? Does anybody have an idea how long you'd be waiting before you get approval and you can implement the plans? And further, I don't want to make this too compounded and complex, but and further, is there anything you can do to implement the plans right now?
Right, so there is a docket that's opened up for all of these plans, and the PUC will lay that proceeding out. But it doesn't mean we have to wait. I think for many of these plans, including things with distributed generation, we're pushing forward with. We really want to be able to advance that, and I think the best way to do it is to get the groups together, get agreement on the issues, and then it's really a no regrets strategy and approach. And we can really speed up the process if we take that approach ourselves.
Sounds great. It sounds like we're at a crossroads, as I mentioned in my article yesterday, was it?
Yes.
Regarding, you know, Alan Oshima's new job
Yes.
as CEO of Hawaiian Electric. Let's take a short break, but before we do, I want to remind you that you can participate with us. Just go on livesift, livesift.com, and there enter participant code ENERGY in caps, and you'll be able to send us questions, and we will, of course, pose those questions to Jim Alberts, Senior Vice President of Customer Service at Hawaiian Electric Company, who joins us today with my co-host, Ray Starling, and Sharon Moriwaki is not far behind. She's right there. We'll be right back after this short break. You'll see.
Aloha, I'm Keli'i Akina, president of the Grassroot Institute. One of the things I love being, however, is the host of the weekly program on ThinkTech Hawaii called Ehana Kako, which means let's work together. I get to interview movers and shakers in our town and across the world so that you and I together can learn and to grow. Please join me every Monday from 2 to 3 p.m. or watch us on the recording, www.thinktechhawaii.com. Aloha and Ehana Kako. Let's work together.
Okay, we're in great shape. We have questions coming in. If you want to ask a question to Jim Alberts, Senior Vice President of Customer Service of Hawaiian Electric Companies, get on livesift, livesift.com. Alex Burgo of LiveSift is here with us, and Sharon Moriwaki, and they're sending us these questions. And the participant code you want to put in is, no surprise, ENERGY. Okay, so let's see. We were talking about the intersection, Jim. So where are you? Can you help us, you know, figure out what exactly, where are we in the continuum of the transformation that started in 2008?
Sure. So I think if I had to put it in my own words, the transformation started. There was a long planning process, and there continued to be a long planning process. And we came to a point where we needed to have actionable plans. So the series of orders the Commission put out in April asked for those actionable plans. So we spent 4 months putting those plans together and submitted those plans. Now we know that process will take a while, but as I described earlier, working with the parties and the other stakeholders to develop these no-regret strategies is the path ahead, because we don't want to wait. We know there are opportunities that can help people in Hawaii, and we want to enable those. So that's where we're at. I think actively working with those stakeholder groups, polishing things that can be moved forward, no regrets.
You know, one of the things, you know, that has been a problem, I think, for customers, and this would be your kuleana, is response time from the utility, also from the PUC. It all seems to move, it has all seemed to move slowly, glacially, as some people say. So where do you think we are on that continuum? I mean, are there steps being taken now, particularly under the new CEO, that would make response time for, say, approvals of residential or commercial, you know, projects, larger projects, PV farms, if you will, that kind of thing, waiver issues. Um, are we going to be able to move faster now, or are we going to be in the same place?
No, I think some of the signals you're seeing now and you're going to continue to see more of in the future are about the process itself. So on our side, not limiting ourselves to perfection, accepting things that are good enough and moving forward on those, knowing that we're going to have to make course corrections along the way, I think is an important shift in strategy. And with the regulatory, political, or policy process, the ability to get agreement before we file those documents with the PUC so they know there's alignment of the parties makes that process go so much quicker. Because if it's a process where everybody is working in opposite directions, it's a long process, and ultimately the PUC has to decide, and that's a tough spot. So getting the community together, working on these solutions, and coming to agreement as we go in together is important. So I think those two aspects are really going to help speed this up.
Yeah, that's what Alan Oshima said. I mean, it's all about communication.
It really is.
You know, communication is the mother of love. We have some questions. Let's take a look at one of the questions and see what we find. What do you got? Okay, curious, great show. What is one thing that each of you personally do in your life or home to help save energy? Okay, well, that must be talking to all three of us. Let's start with you, Jim.
Well, you're going to love this because I have a pool, and
Okay, all right.
I installed our Negawatt moment. I installed a pool pump at home, and it's made a tremendous difference. When I look at my profile, it actually looks a lot like was just described. So tremendous savings. Right. And one thing I love about Hawaii, moving here from the Midwest, are the trade winds. So the ability to have doors and windows open to cool the house has been a great savings for us too.
Great.
I think they're talking to you too, Ray, so what's your answer?
Well,
Now, this is the man who runs energy efficiency in our state, so let's have a really good answer.
Well,
right?
mine's not all about energy efficiency, but what I've done is I was one of the early adopters with solar PV, and then I bought an electric vehicle, and so I am, and I watch very carefully my daily usage online, which you can do whenever you put in one of these systems, and it's very helpful in knowing how yesterday compared with today, and how now, in my case, how over the last 3 years my usage has changed, and what it does during the seasons and so forth. So I also have solar hot water as well. I've gone all out. I haven't bought any batteries, but I'm not ready to disconnect from the utility system now. I think that's not a good choice, but that's what we do at the Starling residence.
I grew up in New York City, and you know, we lived in an apartment in Queens County, and I can still hear my parents yelling at me to turn off the lights. So I do. I turn off the lights. When I leave a room, I turn off the lights. And the funny thing is that my wife yells at me too. So I got all this historical and current you know, instruction about turning off the lights, and it probably helps. That's my answer to the question.
Good, good.
That's a great low-tech way to do it. Good strategy.
Okay, let's take another one that came in here on LiveSift. What do we got? I notice your position, Vice President of Customer Service. Is this a new position in response to public demand that HECO be more customer-driven? That's a good question. Tell us about how it got started.
Well, there was a Vice President of Customer Service. Now, I think it's an important role for all utilities to have this perspective, and it's a great dynamic on our team as I think about that role and challenging every part of the company to think more from a customer point of view and a customer perspective. So I think from our perspective, great way to engage customers and improve that level of service.
Great. So, I mean, let me follow up and ask, well, since, you know, October 1st, you've had a new CEO. How have things changed, and how, in your position as Vice President of Customer Service, do you see them changing as a result of this change in management?
You know, the great thing about October 1st, which from the outside looks like a big change with Alan coming in, The good news is he was working with us for many months in front of that. So he was a critical part of the planning process. So we all got to work with and know Alan throughout that process, which helped us a lot understand how his perspective and his point of view. So we've really hit the ground running from October 1st. We haven't seen a major shift, and it's all about executing on plans and helping customers.
Is he's an agent of change, I take it. So he'd be
Yes.
all around the company, talking about change, talking about a new protocol here and there and the other way, and trying to implement the changes. Do you feel that? Do you see that happening now?
I do. Even the first week he's on the job, he's out in our call center, he's out in the power plants. He wants to communicate this message from the ground up. And it's a great strategy to do this at every level, because that way the communication and the transparency just keeps improving. And the way he's described it is to start that dialogue, because it's the interaction between the different departments and the different levels that comes up with great ideas and new improvement opportunities.
That's great. Okay, let's take a look and see if we have more questions here. In the meantime, let me tell you that you can ask questions on livesift.com, livesift.com. We have Alex Burgo here to help us with that. He's the inventor of LiveSift. And if you go on, you need to have a participant code, and that would be energy in caps. Okay? The question now, why do you have limits on how much solar that is on the network? Well, that's an age-old question, isn't it? And the background is, what, a year ago or so, Hawaiian Electric restrained the amount of interconnect from solar, from PV, and there was all kinds of blowback on that, and still suffering from that in many implications. So why do you have limits? And what are you going to do about those 4,500 people who are unhappy about it?
Right. So it is a good question, and I really don't think of it as a negative. I think about this as a positive to help our community, because the community counts upon electric service to be reliable, dependable, and without that, our community suffers. So doing this in a stepwise approach, doing it safely and in a productive way makes a lot of sense for us and for the whole community and the whole state. It's especially important because we're an island grid, and we can't, if we make a mistake, something goes wrong, we can't call up the regional transmission operator and ask to buy power off the wholesale transmission grid. So we have to be prudent in what we do hooking up the solar. Now, there are some really important safety aspects that have to be addressed, and that's why we look at these, but we break through them. So as you've looked over time, we've steadily increased that rate that we allow on circuits. And as we've done that, the one thing that started to surface is what happens on the system, from a system-wide perspective. So if you look at the plans, the ways we overcome that, and we built that into the plans if anybody wants to go online and read those.
It's HawaiianElectric.com.
So we've got our power supply improvement plans, distributed generating plans out there. So we offer different options, and we start to talk about storage as one way to help solve this. We do some system upgrade work to help solve this. And then we talk about unique things like non-export options for distributed generation, the ability to hook up a system that doesn't export to the grid, or even better, one that adds value to the grid. So if you had a system that you still stayed connected during the day and you took power from the grid during the day at a discounted rate, time of use rate, and you charged your battery with your PV system during the day and then used your battery during our evening peak and in the ramp, those things actually help the grid, and it helps balance the grid instead of everybody taking load off at the same time. Those are the kind of ideas that are really going to propel us into the future.
That's technology.
It really is.
So, I mean, is Hawaiian Electric going to be in a position where it can introduce this technology, make it available, and by making it available, take more interconnect? Instead of having a model of saying yes or no, you say, well, the answer is yes. If you just use this technology, take our black box, if you will, or enter into a new kind of net energy metering kind of arrangement with us, or just be disconnected, as you mentioned, one of the options. It seems to me logically there are a number of options that could alleviate this problem for a given customer. And are they available? Can they be available soon?
Yes, well, we're actively working on those options and alternatives, and we think that's an important thing. to be able to create those so people can choose, but the facts have to be transparent. So when we offer a plan to somebody, the pricing, the options, the opportunity, all have to be on the table. And this can't be just for a small group of people. We have to be able to look at the whole community and be able to say, how does this affect this group or that group? Because today, one of the facts that we've talked about in our plans is that there's a $38 million shift in cost from people who have PV to those that don't. And we need to restructure those programs to be able to do it in a fair way, but still preserve the option for everybody who wants PV to be able to do it. And if you look at the graphs in the plan, easy to read, we propose nearly tripling distributed generating PV by 2030. So we're going to take that all the way to 900 megawatts of distributed capacity.
Sooner the better. Let me go to another question. And by the way, if you want to ask a question, go to livesift, livesift.com, and put in participant code ENERGY in caps, and you too can ask a question. Okay, how old is HECO's grid? I think it's older than I am, and I'm old. And what does it mean when HECO says it's going to upgrade the grid? Good question. Jim?
Right. Well, the grid isn't static. So the grid was built a long time ago, but it receives upgrades from time to time. And some of those are based on need, and some are based on proactive planning. Now, in the past, most of that with one-way feeds of central plants and distribution systems, everything was done in a very almost laboratory environment where you could predict what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, when it needs to be done. You could study the assets, and you could see how quickly things corrode, how often they stop working, and you try to predict that in advance and go replace them. Now, for the future, these upgrades are going to start to help enable future connections. So no longer looking backwards and doing things retroactively, it's looking forward. And I think that's the exciting part that everybody's looking forward to internally and across the community, is how we enable that in order to create those choices, because that's how you create choices. You set expectations. That way people aren't waiting in the queue. You can say in advance, this is how much we have for the next few months, and these are the options that you have to be able to participate in those programs. And that way everybody has a choice.
Yeah, it's all about choices. It's the 21st century. It's like on-demand TV, you know. You can watch this program on demand anytime you want. Okay, we're going to take a short break, and then we'll come back and we'll take some more questions. If you want to ask questions, go to livesift.com and put in the participant code ENERGY. We'll be right back. More questions for Jim Alberts right after this break.
Aloha, this is Martin Despang, co-host of the Urban Transcendence Show by Alejandra Yamashita and Martin Despang. And me being an architect and an educator in architecture, I'm really interested in that we make our urban environment here in downtown Honolulu as exciting, invigorating, and challenging, beautiful as our wonderful paradise natural environment. We're going to bring in guests from a diversity of areas that help us to learn how we can achieve that goal that shouldn't be that hard to reach. So we look very much forward to see you then. Thank you.
Okay, we're back, we're live, we're here. I'm Jay Fidell. Here we are in Hawaii, the state of clean energy, our flagship show between 4 to 5 every Wednesday afternoon. I'm joined by my co-host, Ray Starling of Hawaii Energy, and our special honored guest, Jim Albert, Senior Vice President of Customer Service at Hawaiian Electric. And I'm advised by the control room that we have more questions than we could handle in the rest of this show. So maybe, Jim, can you stay overnight?
Sure. We're going to make it a marathon. We're staying here till we're done.
All right.
All right, let's take another one and see what we get. Okay, what's new about HECO's plan to help its customers? Will it differ for the neighbor islands, HECO, MECO, and versus Oahu?
All right, so
Helco, MECO versus Oahu.
I'll tackle the question about the neighbor islands first. And it's a good point, because each of the islands is somewhat different. For Oahu, as example, it doesn't have the advantages of geothermal and as much wind as Maui has. So the Big Island, if you look in our plan, by 2030, they're going to be as high as 92% renewables using geothermal. Maui is going to be a little bit higher with wind and also a potential geothermal plant. And on Oahu, we look at adding fast start generating plants to be able to enable more PV and intermittent energy, and a lot more PV, whether that be utility scale solar or rooftop solar, and a new tool that we've talked about, community solar. And that's really designed for people who don't have roof space, they live in a condo, they live in an apartment. It's a way for them to buy into a program to participate in PV where in the past they may not have. So we're looking all across the world for these options to allow people to participate and help. So I think that's the new aspect of it, and that correlates to the strategies for each of the islands. Each island has its own power supply improvement plan because there are some unique attributes for each.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, how do you think it's going to wind up? I mean, PV has, sort of shown us that it is, more important than we thought in 2008, really.
Right.
More of it, more people they're more accepting of it, more accepting maybe than wind and other possibilities. That the technology has come a long way, that the panels are available, that the installers are available and competent to install as much as you want. So, it's got to be mainstream. The question is, how does this look to you going forward? Is it all going to be PV? And when is storage going to come into play? And how is storage going to integrate with, your mission of customer service?
Sure. So the storage aspects of this are great because it can happen on both sides of the meter. It can happen on the customer side of the meter, and it can happen on the utility side. And they really, to some extent, serve different purposes. So the first tranche of storage on the grid will be things that enable the grid to accept more PV. It won't be targeted at shifting load. Now in the home, you might be able to, depending on how much you buy, you could potentially perform that function. But those integration points are going to be essential for us to be successful going forward. And if we tackle that together, just like we started the show, if we sit down and we design the standards to interconnect batteries and storage systems on the grid, and we agree to that, and we take those plans to the PUC, we'll be able to move forward much more quickly through that process.
I know there's people out there, I know that because I know people think like this, that have suggestions. Now, they could be good suggestions or they could be bad suggestions.
Sure.
But everybody, I think a lot of people feel they would like to collaborate with HECO.
Sure.
They would like to give you their bright-eyed suggestions they wake up in the morning with. Okay, if they wanted to give you a suggestion, Jim, how would they do that?
Yeah, today if they want to email me, they can, jim.elberts@hawaiianelectric.com. We have started a process surveying customers, and we really appreciate that feedback. We do focus groups, and we want that input because ultimately, if customers want it, that's good for the state, it's good for us. Now, one thing I might add about PV, it's important to have diversity of solutions. So one thing we learned about being heavy on oil is that if something ever disrupts the oil supply, then you have issues. So with PV, that means having different alternatives and options like we talked about, whether it's export, non-export, grid scale, but even simple things like, we're exploring the locational and the directional value of the panels, even on the islands, to be able to space that out from a time perspective. So all of those things that add value, that help smooth things out, help us a lot. I've been involved in statistics for a long time, and one of the statements I love about statistics is that the variation is the enemy, but it's also the opportunity. So from our perspective, things that ramp up and down very quickly are hard to manage and hard to work with. So finding the solutions to help fill those gaps, whether it's on the customer side or our side, whatever is the most economical and the most efficient way to do it, that's what we want.
Yeah. Okay, let's take a question. Next question from LiveSift, and if you want to ask a question, there's still a little while to pose a question to Jim Alberts, Senior Vice President of Customer Service of HECO. Go to LiveSift, LIVESIFT.com, and put in participant code energy in caps. Okay, the question now. what types of new customer service application and initiatives are you working on? I'm sure you got a long list up and down your arm, but you should give us a few maybe.
Sure. Well, I'll start with one that I think is an enabler for lots of other things, which is the smart grid. Now, we've done a small pilot, 5,200 meters across Oahu, and we've installed smart meters. And the intent of that is to send, as Ray described earlier, how do you send signals to people so they know how much energy they're using, and they can adapt to that. Now, the next phase of that, we start to look at things like prepay options. Now, these are it's a program for people to pay in advance so they don't have to pay a deposit, but it does a lot of great things for us in the back office side too, because now if you're an electronic billed customer, there's never a collection effort, there's no bill, there's no postage, there's no envelope. So it's a huge efficiency move, and it really pulls the customer into the process and engages them in a way that they actively manage. When this first became popular in Europe, customers that started on prepay saved an average of 15% on their usage just by being aware of how much they use every day in those intervals. So those kind of things enable time of use rates, so we can start to send the right price signals to different areas. So I know that Ray's an electric vehicle owner. Wouldn't it be great if we could send a price signal for Ray to be able to charge his vehicle during the day, because we have overproduction today that we don't have storage for. So if we could move that to electric vehicles and ramp up electric vehicles, that'd be a tremendous way to implement overuse of PV production today.
When's it going to happen?
Well, we're working on it now. I would bet, well, I don't want to put a specific time on it because there are a lot of stakeholders in this process, and I don't want to jump out what we've been talking about. But for us, the sooner the better, because if we can move that usage during the day, and it sounds counterintuitive, right? For many, many years, utilities always said, move all your load to the evening, because the peak is during the day, because that's when businesses were operating. Now, here in Hawaii, we don't have a heavy industrial load. It was a lot of residential, like commercial. So as people adopted PV, that daytime peak really dropped, and it now became a nighttime peak. So PV works during the day, so we need a way to use that power during the day. And we think we can do it by incenting people with the right price signals, and we don't need storage to do it.
But you will ultimately have to have a lot of storage.
Yes.
And there's all kinds of questions about that. How much, where, what's it cost,
Right.
how do you integrate it, whether, the utility buys it, pays for it, whether it encourages, maybe it offers incentives to encourage individuals to have the storage. Okay, but not dwelling on that, let's take another question. Okay. How do you see the value of establishing a red team? A red team, I've heard of that.
It was on one of your shows.
Yeah, right.
He
With
signed it.
Marco
He signed it.
Mangelsdorf, with HECO, to challenge existing assumptions and company dogma. Oh, there it is, Marco. Thank you, Marco. Right on. Good one. Okay, what do you think about a red team, Jim?
Well, first, I love the question because it's the first time I've ever seen one come like this that's somebody has signed.
Good for Marco.
So that's terrific. Appreciate the transparency, Marco. The red team concept is one, and we don't refer to it as a red team concept, but we have formed teams that are working on this transition. And we've identified the biggest opportunities, and we're very focused on how we execute on those opportunities. It's a priority for us. Alan Oshima has said it as a high priority for him of how we actually move this forward and deliver the value sooner. So even though we don't call them red teams, Marco, I think the concept stands, and that's an approach that we've adopted.
Well, in the discussion we had with Alan on October 1st, which was really a very good discussion, I really enjoyed that. And that's what motivated me to write my article for the newspaper yesterday about that. There were two things that popped up on this line. One is I think his term was refit, to refit the jobs within the company, to make sure that everything was aligned, that if somebody was interested in being, a forward thinker, let's put him in a job where he could be a forward thinker,
Right.
Instead of locked in, old models. That was one possibility. Another possibility was to go outside, and look outside for talent on Bishop Street or elsewhere, who knows where. Not necessarily engineers, but call them technologists.
Sure.
Maybe it's the same thing. A modern engineer is a technologist.
Yes.
And bring in talent from outside. And a third possibility is this idea of red teams, which I understand comes from the federal government, where they bring in a red team, and the red team challenges the assumptions and makes suggestions and looks around and sort of shakes the basket a little bit.
Sure.
So you have all these three possibilities all working, to try to effectuate this change we're talking about.
Right.
This is profound.
It is.
I mean, how is the company reacting to all this talk about change right where you live, profound change in everything that everybody does?
Right. My perspective is people are really excited about it, and the reason I think that is because putting a plan down on paper creates a path forward, and working on a path, on a plan with the community support is important for all of us. It makes it productive and efficient. And if we're working on that, we're not wasting time, we're getting value for people. Now, to some of the examples you gave, I think we're using all three of those. As we developed our plans over the past 4 months before we filed them, we called in a lot of experts. We went out into the community and we did get some input. Now, we didn't have a lot of time. It was only 4 months, but we did go out, we solicited a lot of experts. We have hired some creative thinkers. So if you would sit in our meetings today compared to what they probably were in the utility business 20 years ago, you would say they're radically different because we are challenging each other. And we're doing it in a very collaborative way. But we push that as hard as we can because we know it's important to make progress.
I want to be clear that Marco and me, and for that matter, Ray Starling, are willing to sit on your meetings anytime. Okay, just give us a call. We'll be over there in 5 minutes.
Okay, I'll take you up on
You
that.
want radical, we've got that.
Let's take a last question from LiveSift. So what do we got here is a last question that came in from our viewing audience from LiveSift. HECO and change hasn't gone together. So what is the most significant change, interesting, since October 1st, and what is planned for the coming year? We're kind of talking about that, but I guess he wants to know something concrete right now.
Concrete. Well, the most concrete thing are the fact we've written plans and we've produced those plans. Now we put them out as an approach. So we want to create that dialogue. There is going to be a process, but it doesn't constrain people from providing input on that today. The sooner we get the input, the better. And if we wait for that long process, like I said before, people will be frustrated with that. So the biggest change is having that path forward and getting people excited about that path, because that's the way we are going to add value. Now, some things we have to think about as we go through this. We have to think about how we help all customers. This can't be a plan that just addresses one or two things, because there are some people who may never put PV on, and they still expect fair treatment. So how do we segment customers in many different ways? And I would add that as one thing that's substantially different. In the past, the regulatory model looks at residential customers as all residential customers, but there are going to be many flavors of residential customers that all want different things. So these tools we're putting in and the applications we'll file for the smart grid and the smart meters will enable many of those things to happen. Now, one thing that probably isn't as easy to talk about is how we think about PV. So over the past 3 years, the average PV system has grown by more than a kilowatt. So if we simply went back in time and said that was the size that people could implement, there would be another 5,000 to 6,000 customers right now today that could have PV. Now, if you go back to the spirit and the intent of the rule that said we want systems to be able to offset some or all of somebody's load, and we implemented it that way, we could spread this out across many more people. And it actually helps balance it for the grid too, because you're not putting it all in one spot. So it's really you have to add some social context to this too.
It's about diverse customers, all of whom want customer service, and they want it from you, Jim.
Now, the one thing I would add too, then there was a great survey that University of Hawaii just put out that we can't lose sight of, and it's about bills. You know, there's a lot of talk about renewables and how we accomplish that, but there has to be a balance. And according to this survey, the number one most important issue by a lot is cost. And we can't lose sight of that. So that's an important aspect for all of us to think about. To always make sure as we're thinking about these scenarios and alternatives, what's the cost of it? And what does that do? And how does it impact the different stakeholder groups?
They say that the old model was the utility as a monopoly. That word doesn't apply anymore, it seems to me. As a monopoly, was always looking first to what the PUC wanted. The PUC was sort of the agent of the people. It was the agent of the community and the customers. But now it's different.
It is.
Now the customer, and Alan said as much, now the customer is number one. And that means you.
Yes.
So congratulations.
Thank you. Ultimately the customer is number one. It's the way it has to work.
Yeah. Okay, Ray, your time. Give us a summary of reaction.
Well, summary of reaction. Okay. Well, you know, we really appreciate your coming today. I know there's a lot going on. There's a big hearing. You were in a hearing all day yesterday, and I think
this is much better.
This is much better.
I hope nobody plays that back.
But what I hear Jim saying is that they are really excited within the company, want to get things going. And I think that's a good sign because, you know, the customers, the people out there who are worried about, you know, their costs going up, continuing to go up, they really need to see something happen. And the sooner you can knock one out into the outfield and get a base hit or get on second base or third, the better, the easier it's going to be for everybody to come together and say, oh, okay, we got a plan. It's starting to happen, and everybody gets on board and helps with this process because it's going to take a team effort with everybody working together.
Hey, Hanakako here in the state of clean energy. Jim Albert, Senior Vice President of Customer Service, and Ray Starling, my co-host. Look into the future of Hawaiian Electric companies. Thank you so much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Aloha.